All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another stream. We are back streaming this week after a very long time because I wasn't able to stream earlier in the week. So glad to finally be here. We've got OSG Hourglass. We've got Sunbird Relic in the chat. Hello and welcome. So what are we going to be doing tonight? Well, tonight is going to be a little bit different than any other stream that we've done. Usually when we're doing streams, we're playing Minecraft. And tonight, we're going to be doing something... Well, we're playing Minecraft, obviously. But we're going to be doing more of a sort of tutorial stream as opposed to a let's play in a world stream. As the title of the stream suggests, we're going to be talking about how to do custom terrain, or probably a more accurate description would be how I do custom terrain. We're going to be taking a look at a couple of the different types of tools that you can use, from vanilla all the way to world edit, Axiom, and we're just going to touch on those a little bit. Before we start with those, I'll just say I'm not an expert at them, so I'm sure that there's probably lots of other ways to do some of the things that we're going to do, but yeah, we're going to do it to the extent that I know how to use them and how I've used them in the past. So we're in a brand new world. This is just a world where we can sort of do a couple of different things in it, and I figured we could just start here. We got some interesting things over there, and just do some different examples of how to do custom terrain. And we'll start from some basic stuff and we'll go through for a little while and see where we end up. So that is the plan for tonight. All right, well, let's see. There's a couple of different things about custom terrain. So you could do custom terrain in many different ways. You can do custom terrain where it's pretty close to vanilla, and then you can do custom terrain that's nothing like vanilla. We'll start off with some basic things. I think one of the easiest ways to think about doing terrain is when you're taking a look at what you have in your world. You want to think about the terrain in waves, and you can sort of see that here with this field. If we go up, we've got lots of little lines here, and the lines of the terrain are going to indicate elevation, obviously. But when you're planning out doing the terrain that you're going to be in your area, you want to mimic that. And there's certain rules that sort of Minecraft vanilla terrain follows. You're going to typically have 2 to 3, sometimes 4 layers of dirt. You can see it over here. So you've got your dirt, your grass, and then stone underneath. And that's how. So when you're thinking about, or you're trying to imitate that vanilla terrain, you're going to want to keep it. Now, one thing that I used to do when I first started doing some custom terrain, especially on mountains, let's see if I could, we're going to get some grass blocks. We're going to get some, hello, Robin. Yes. No acacia. We're not starting off in a savanna biome. All right, let's get some dirt. So you could do this. Would be something that, and you would, or I would do this. This is what I would do when I was first starting out. Go along with something like that. And then behind it, I do a little bit like that. So it'd be just sort of very pointy, and then probably, then I'd have the grass blocks like that. This is just an example of sort of how I used to do terrain. And why I'm showing this is because in a small space, that doesn't look terrible. And when you start repeating that over and over and over, it's very different than what you would see in vanilla terrain. And I think the reason why it doesn't really work is because it's all very jagged and it's sort of flat. So even though you could end up, if you repeat this process going up, you're going to have sort of a repeating pattern. It's all really jagged. It's not going to look smooth and rounded and work how terrain is going to work. So what you want to do instead, when you're thinking about this, is you want to start off, and because this is terrain, you're not going to be mechanical about it. So it's not going to be like go 1 block, go up 1 block, go over 2 blocks, go up 2 blocks. You're going to you can just play around with it a little bit. But you want to do something more like this, where you have more of a rounded structure when you're trying to do elevation. You're also going to do this when it's a flat area as well. And this is sort of just basic hillside, how you're going to want to set up a hillside. If it's going to be really steep, if it's going to, the shallower or the less elevation that you're going to have, the less you have to go up when you're doing this, obviously. But if you're going for a really steep cliff, this is what you're going to want to do something more along this line. If you're going to stick with more of a vanilla look. There. So you can see the difference between what we're doing here is sort of, this has it's similar to this in that there is that wave pattern, but it's a lot more jagged. And whereas this it's going to have this arch in the center. And if you extend this out over a larger range, what that's going to eventually do is you're going to end up with sort of this sort of feature here where part of the mountain sticks out, as opposed to, oop, I didn't want to throw that away. This, which is just going to end up with something that's really flat. So that's an example of sort of my first step in learning how to do custom terrain, was going from let's just place blocks to let's make place blocks in a way that's going to replicate what you see in the world around you. We also have some tools here that will allow us to empty or clear out what we do. Boom, gone. All right. So, vanilla terrain. One thing that I learned from, and this is something I learned from both watching videos by Pixel Riffs and Fweb back many years ago. Let's think about different types of terrain that we can build. A lot of times when I'm thinking about doing custom terrain, it's because I want to have height and elevation. So it's some sort of mountain or cliffside. I don't do a lot of flat custom terrain. Usually if I'm doing flat custom terrain, I'm just filling in gaps. Because, if you're looking in a Minecraft, just this plains biome, I mean, we've got a ravine over here, we've got a hole over there, we've got this ravine over here, another hole over there. So it's a lot of always filling in. But if you want to create different types of terrain, there's lots of different ways to do that. let's think about some different types of terrain that we could build. All right, if we're going to do a cliffside, let's say we're going to do a custom cliffside. Let's start here. I think this is a good spot for that. All right, so let's say we're going to be extending this terrain out and we want a cliff that's going to follow this little curve right here. If you're just getting started and you're going to be doing vanilla, what I like to do is get some stone. And we're going to go along here. And we're going to put in stone along the border. Now, if you're playing in survival, it's a little bit more difficult, but because you have to dig out these blocks and put them in and all of that stuff, but we're not going to worry about that here. All right. We're going to take that up, then let's go up 7 blocks. Now, there's a couple of ways that we could do this, and we could do this quicker. Because we're in creative, let's say we're just gonna sort of create a scenario of we're planning this out in a creative world first before we build it in our survival world. I think that that's a good way to do that. So you can do this, and this is a there's no mods for this. You can do clone, use the tab, and what that's doing is selecting the coordinates for this bottom block. You copy it, go up to here, you paste it back in, tab it out. We're now cloning this column of stone. And now what we can do is we can go over here, tab, and we've just copied that over. And this is really nice if you don't have access to mods or you don't want to use mods, because you can just do this completely vanilla. These are just built-in commands. Obviously, you can't do this in survival. This is only possible in creative or if you have commands enabled. That allows you just to quickly place in a bunch of blocks for planning purposes or just, trying to get something designed. And otherwise, if you were in survival, you'd just be doing this. This is also the way to do it. Go along 3 blocks at a time. Which, again, but because we're, trying to show how to do things, we're not going to place every single block. We're going to try to to go. But this is certainly faster than placing all of the blocks in, even though it doesn't look quite like, well, as long as you press the keys correctly. But I used to do this a lot because I didn't use Axiom or World Edit. And so I started, okay, well, how can I use just regular commands? And there's a lot more commands that you can do. These are the clone command and the fill command are just the ones, the most basic, common. And I'll show you how we can use the fill command to be able to do some things with terrain as well. All right, so we've got sort of a basic cliff face here. But just having a flat wall, that's pretty boring. you know, so if you had your grass layer right here along the top, I mean, it's going to look very much like it's not connected with the rest of the terrain around it. It's going to stand out. So how can we make this look more like it's part of this terrain? So there's a couple of different things that we can do. One thing that we can do is, all right, let's get some dirt. We can create sort of an overlap here. So we've got our dirt that doesn't quite come out. It just hangs down a little bit. And we can make it do a couple of different things. Now we're going to want to make sure that we're not having a flat space underneath here, so it's all the same. So in some spots we might want to bring it down a little bit more like that. And then I'm just going to go through here and just kind of mix some of these in, and a little bit like that, grass. And so by having it overhang, that instantly is going to make it a lot better. And you can still do a lot of different, well, or we're going to get into some of the details that we can add. But let's go ahead and get the rest of the dirt placed. We can have the rest of this filled in. All right, there we go. So that's sort of step one. Hello there. Smart mining server, welcome. All right, so we've got step one. Now, the other thing that we could do is that even though we just went ahead and placed in that grass all along here, we can also start to mix up, and we can have some of these come down as well. So that way, we're trying to avoid having straight edges in these places, because if you just don't have that in real terrain, even on a cliff, it's not going to be just a complete stop. It's going to have a little bit of a breakdown not breakdown, but it's going to have a little bit of a curve, because the terrain is going to slope down a little bit. So by doing that, now got just a little bit more variation here. There we are. So I'd say that that's pretty good for now for the top. But we still have the flat area underneath where we've got the stone. And there's a couple of things that we can do here. So let's go ahead. We're going to go stone, stairs, slabs. Those are going to be good. And what you want to use these for is that you can then go through Is this multiplayer? No. So what are we doing? Well, what we're doing here, it's not multiplayer. We're doing a little bit of a terrain tutorial, custom terrain tutorial. That's what we're doing. All right. So for this stone here, what we're doing is we want to find some spots. So let's take this spot here and take these. We'll put some of these in here. All right. So we're just sort of creating gaps, breaking it away. Now we could fill this space in here with stone like that. And then over here, we could do something similar. Put stone stair. And there's not really an order to this. It's just about making it, just play around with it, see what you like. You could, you could do something like that. A stair like that. Always not good. Put that there. That. And you're filling in this space here. But you see, if you end up with sort of repeating patterns, you may want to mix that up a little bit so it's not exactly the same. Another thing that I like to do with stairs is I like to take one stair like that, one stair like that. Fill that in behind. And that's just a nice, really small bit of texturing that you can do. You can even do that, that. That's where it creates just a little bit of breakage in the stone, so it's not all the same. So this is sort of what I'd consider like vanilla plus kind of terrain. You're using all of the same types of blocks that you would see in a regular vanilla terrain, but you're just adding in things to make it just a little more interesting. All right. Put some of these here, and we're just mixing them in. But see, even though we're not using other types of blocks, we're by adding in the stairs and the slabs, it's creating some more visual interest to that terrain. So you don't have to go through and use a bunch of different types of blocks. You can, but you can also just use regular stone and it can create some nice looks. The other thing that I like to do too, so you can do this thing where you're creating cracks. And I like to do this with put a stair in some spots, and you put that, and maybe we do a stair there, or we can do stair here, slab there. Stair there, and then that. Something like that. So you can do these cracks in the wall. That's another fun thing to do. But it's just, you know, finding ways to make what is flat not flat. And you also want to make sure that you're not ending up with copies. There we go. Okay, so I was leaving these open because the other thing that you can do then is if you're going to add in if you want to add in some variation or some other types of blocks, having these cracks is the perfect spot to do that. Now, let's get some deep slate. Deep slate is a good one. These back here. Now you've got just this little dark background. You can even put it with this, mix up the texturing a little bit. And that's just a really nice way to put a little bit variety in to your walls without having to do too much. Just like that. Really subtle. Pretty good. Now we probably would want to have a bit more going on over here. We want it to match up with what we've done in the other spots. And I think that this is probably just a little bit too sharp here. So we're gonna do something like that. And maybe over here. There we are. Okay, so that's sort of our first pass at texturing. But, you know, just having stone. Ah, thanks, Relic. Yeah, stairs are great. So that's but you know, we want to mix up the stone a little bit. So let's get andesite, of course, it's going to be a big one. and gravel is going to be the other one. These are also pretty common. So using these, again, we're thinking of ways that we can have the terrain be mostly vanilla. So we're not going to, you know, obviously the deep slate here, not very tough for coral blocks. Yeah, tough for coral blocks are good. We could do that. And the dead coral blocks. So let's see. Like that one. Now, you could even do light gray wool. That's another good one. But we're let's think about where, well, and we probably would want to have some spaces over here where we put some deep slate in. Because right now, it's looking very one-sided. Let's just quickly add in some spots here. Second wall behind the first for more details for the first wall. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, you can add in a second wall. Sort of like what we're doing with the deep slate. There we go. All right. Just wanted to balance both sides out because we'd had deep slate over here. All right. So if we go through here then with our tuff, we can start mixing that in different spots along the base. And we could have that just sort of be in clumps at different areas. Now, one thing that you can do with this is just sort of see where are some natural spots where it's dark. And then you're just kind of filling it in those areas as well. Here. So we've got that added in. We could then go through and see, maybe that looks good. And then you could have your gravel around it. It's a way to blend it in a little bit more. And so this is the dead brain coral, and that goes pretty well up against the tuff. That, and then it's in the gravel, just to help it to blend into the stone afterwards. Okay. Now this is one area where having the stairs is a little bit of a mix, because we'd probably want to go through with those stairs, and we're going to replace them with some other types of stairs just so that they don't stick out quite so much. We're just kind of filling these in. Oh, and all right. And then we can take our andesite and just kind of put that in some of these spots here. because it's a lighter block, probably want it to be on some of the more exposed areas. So we're gonna do it, you know, on these corners or where there's big open spaces. And probably not enough space to really add in our light gray wool, although we could, yeah, we've already got a lot going on. Gradients, yeah. More gradients, yes. Okay, so we're pretty close here to the finish, but now we've got some more things that we could add in. So we've got hanging roots. We can get some rooted dirt. Leaves, or actually, let's do blueberries. So we can go through here. We can add some texture to our dirt with the rooted dirt. And again, there's not really, when I'm doing this, I'm thinking about a few things, but it's really just placing blocks and seeing, you know, do I like that? Do I not like that? And we just can put those in, and then you can, you know, maybe we hang down some rooted dirt in some spots. You know, unfortunately, we can place these on the rooted dirt if we want, or we can put it on regular dirt. And then we can just kind of see, is that too much? Not enough? And then maybe we add in some of that. There we go. This tree is sort of in the way. Just... All right, there we go. And let's get, probably want to have, you know, just some grass along the top here. So there we go. I mean, that's just our little simple cliff. Thanks, Robin. But that's how you can use, you know, just vanilla tools to create some custom terrain. You're not doing, you know, we're not doing anything particularly, you know, that requires any sort of special Axiom models or anything. You know, we're just following a shape that we had. The shape was pretty much the default terrain here. We just filled in the cliff to follow that little curve. Went up 7 blocks, added in some dirt layers on the top. And then what you're doing is just making sure, you know, you just don't want to have straight lines for anything. So we just put in a little couple of mixes, added in some variety here for the blocks, and we get something that doesn't look completely out of place with the vanilla world, but is going to also make it look pretty interesting too. And then what you would do is you just fill in the terrain behind it, have it come up to here, and that'd be a nice little cliff. Kind of makes me want to do this, and I've got some cliffs I want to do this on now. So that's a good little practice. All right, that's vanilla terrain. Now, some other things that you can do for vanilla terrain. Let's say, and again, this is if you're in creative, and let's say you want to build up more of a mount, because with a cliff, you're not trying to fill in a bunch of space underneath it or around it. So let's go over, maybe right over here. It's a good spot. Well, What am I looking for? I'm trying to... Let's say, okay, I know what we're going to do. Let's go right here. And we're going to build sort of a boulder in the middle of this. There's some different ways that you could do that. One would be to get a stone blocks, and you could sort of start and try to see about, could you create sort of a wireframe for the boulder that you want to be able to build. And you're just sort of creating a shape like this. Maybe come over here. Just kind of going around. So this is just to create the general shape that we want, and then we would go through and fill it in. And that's probably the best way to do it if you're not going to use any tools, you're building in survival, you're not going to do anything in creative at all. But if you're going to do something in creative that you would then rebuild in your survival world, another way that you could do this would be to make use of the fill command, and you could go let's see, how do I almost forgot. Okay, so you come over here and you get 2 spots, and you go here, here, and you go fill. So you use /fill, get the coordinates for the block that you're pointed at. So as long as you're pointed at it and you press tab, it'll automatically populate the coordinates. Over here, do the same thing. So you copy, paste in the original coordinates, you get the coordinates for that new location. And then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do sand. All right, so we've got a block of sand here. We're going to make use of the clone command again. All right. Hey, Em. How's it going? Thanks for stopping by the stream. All right. And then we can just come over here. Let's say we have this, and we just do this symbol, or wait, no, do this. So that puts it just right here, and that drops it right here. Now, yeah. So what this is going to do is we can just drop in the sand. Yeah, it's oh, we don't want to be, because we want it to be close to where we are. By dropping in the sand, what it allows us to do is sort of create a little bit of more and again, I don't know that vanilla is the best way to do this. But this is more, what can you do without vanilla? If we want to get rid of this, we can just do fill. Oh wait, no, we don't want to do that because we're gonna. But once you have sort of all of these here, you can then start carving it up into the mountainside that you want. And the benefit to using sand is if you break it, it drops. And you can quickly start to get pretty interesting terrain right here. We'll go ahead and take out our wireframe here. We'd probably want to have a little bit more. We'll just do a section of this. We're not going to do the full thing, but we can just go here, add in some more. So we'll just start to fill in this area a little bit here too. The benefit to having all of these blocks is that you can then, it's a little bit easier when you're trying to carve up a space as opposed to trying to put in a bunch of blocks that you then have to fill in the space with. So it's more, you're more sculpting as opposed to building. Yeah. All right. We can put in a little bit more. Although you do have to, because we don't have, we're dealing with squares here, it is a little bit less efficient than some other tools. All right. We're just going to focus on this surface here. I think we want to have that come down. But just like what we were talking about earlier, where you're working with sort of curves in the terrain, you're doing the same thing with this. Having sort of single points that stick up, it's not going to be very natural looking for the world. So we're going to be sort of filling those in or shaving them down. Now, maybe your terrain that you're going for is going to need lots of pokey parts sticking out. But for what we're doing here, keeping it pretty close. All right. I think that's not too bad. We want to have less squareness up here. Now, the next part is that we then can replace this sand with stone. We can do that by selecting a point on this side, which is going to encompass the whole area. We go up over here, go just like this. We select stone. We're going to fill it with stone, but we're going to also add in replace sand, and our sand is now stone. So we get the advantage of the sand to be able to do our sculpting, but now we have stone in place that we can then go back through and texture it all up. So we can do all of the sort of texturing that we were doing over there. So we can get our stairs and slabs, and we're going through. We can put, you know, our stairs in, and just do a little bit of that, and you know, you can sort of help smooth out some of the sharpness of the different types of blocks. It's not quite so rigid. Just a little bit like that. And then once you sort of, work out the different angles that you have, you could even do some of the things that we were doing with the cracks too. So, you just carve through here. And let's get, we could even do something a little bit more dramatic if we get black stone and we put that in there. And then it's putting in some stairs just round and round. And one thing that really helps to sell it is if you can do it around a corner like this. It is a little bit more tricky. Then if you put that in there, that goes there, and then stair here. Almost want to do that. And we've got our sort of artificial wall here. We need to fill that in. There we go. Don't look at the back, and it's all good. Okay. There we go. So that sort of adds some dramatic parts to it. Then we can get our texturing blocks. Here are hotbars, so we'll do the same thing. So we get our dead coral blocks, we got tough blocks. I like putting them in the order that I'll be doing the gradient in, because then I can just kind of go along through and add it in. So we can put our tough down at the base. Add in the coral. That. Now, because we're going to be, this might actually be a spot that we have, it makes sense to put in some of our other blocks that we were going to use that we didn't really use, like the light gray wool and the andesite. That works better. We could even put in, maybe we wouldn't start with the tough, but we could put in some of our coral blocks there. Something like that. Because you could almost use the texturing to create some more types of cracks. Or what would look like the types of cracks that what we've had in other areas. Sort of like that. And then if we get our andesite. Glad it's been helpful. Yeah. So then we can put in our andesite there. We're just kind of mixing that in too. Probably put in, ooh, that's really bright. We don't want to do that. So we've got our stone there, but we don't want to just stop with the stone. You could also add in some vegetation to it. But instead of going with sort of grass and dirt, what I have been started doing recently, which I really like, is we're going to get some green wool, we're going to get some moss, and green terracotta. And then we're going to go up here, and then we're just going to sort of put in some of these green blocks. The replace tool. So the replace tool, well, I'm just using sort of vanilla tools right now. Is the replace tool one of those? If it is, I'm not using it because I don't know it. I'm just sort of using what I use. We're going to get into some other types of tools here in just a second. The first part was just to have some sort of vanilla. So what I like to do with these green blocks is to get the green on there, and then press left alt. Left alt? Left alt. I don't... is it you hold left alt and then click? And then we put in the leaves on top. So this is what I like to have been starting to do more. You have the green blocks underneath. But then you put the leaves over the top of it. So you get sort of the bushy effect. And then you can have it come down. We go to keybinds. Keybinds? Let's see this. All right. Movement. Should be left alt. So I know I have my left alt do something different. Use item place block. Debug. Yeah. I just usually press both of the left and right mouse buttons because that's how I usually get it. All right. So this is sort of my more of an overgrown rocky look. Probably would want to put in some green here too. I'm just thinking about areas which are sort of on the top, and that's where I'd put the green. Yeah. I can't believe it was working either. All right. But I think that's sort of our vanilla terrain building. It's definitely more challenging. There's a lot more tools that you can use if we don't do vanilla. But you can sort of see, I mean, there's a lot you can do. Oh, we've got glowberries growing in. quickly. Or a block of sand there. But you can have sort of two different types of terrain. Sort of the cliffside, you've got boulders. Well, let's say we want to do something more dramatic. And I think that's where the tools really come in handy, because you can definitely do more dramatic terrain a lot easier. But we're going to be using a lot of the same principles. So let's do this. Clear our hotbar. Before we get to that, we can get ourselves. So one thing that you can do if you use world edit, you may not spend a lot of time with world edit because it's right alt. I use right alt for Axiom things, so I might have to play around with that a little bit. All right, but world edit, what world edit will allow you to do is you can do a brush sand, and this is what we were sort of imitating with our sand over there. I do mask air. So what we've done is with our shovel, we've made it so that it will automatically generate spheres of sand. We're masking the air so that it's not replacing blocks. And then you can see here, we can do this. And what this is going to allow us to do is we can now have a lot of blocks just get placed in. And this is why, another reason why sand is really useful for these parts. And then place in a lot like that. Sort of fill in a lot of these spaces here. But actually, let's do this. We're not going to spend probably a lot of time with that because it's, I think, not going to add too much to what we're doing. If you're going to use world edit, you might as well use Axiom, because I think it's got a lot more functionality that's a little bit easier to use. So we can take a look at that now. All right. So we can activate Axiom is just activated when you turn it on. Takes you into this window, and it's a lot more, well, it looks a lot more complicated when you're starting out. Took me a while before I was comfortable using it. There's a lot of things in here that I'm still not well versed in, but we're going to, you can still do a lot even if you don't know everything. One thing that I really like using when I'm doing these types of terrains is this rock tool. You can create, you can use different shapes, and it lets you just put in a bunch of stuff. You can just fill it all in. I mean, all the way up over there, all the way around here. We've got it a little bit everywhere. The ability to undo is also really useful. You can change the shape that you're using. So you can use cylinders. You can change the size. You can have it really flat. You can make it really tall. All of a sudden, you've got, these great big pillars of stone in the middle of your terrain. So these are really useful tools. But I'd say one of the things to keep in mind when you're using these tools is that if you understand, being able to do this type of terrain. Yeah, 3D modeling software. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, world edit is really useful. I mean, it's been around forever. It does a lot of things. I use a combination of, I'll use world edit for different things, Axiom and vanilla stuff all the time. I don't ever use just one exclusively. But understanding how to do, the techniques that you do here, knowing how to do that will just help you to use Axiom. Or world edit even, you know, because just like this, you could do the exact same thing here, a lot of it with world edit. So learning it in vanilla is really going to be useful because that's going to teach you which blocks you like to use, what combination of blocks are going to look good, what's, you know, how do you use shadows or texturing or, you know, all of those little things. Those are all going to be just expanded upon when you use Axiom or world edit, any of those. But with that said, let's say we want to make this mountain over here have some custom terrain. I think the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this structure over here. Because that's just going to get in the way. And fortunately, we don't have to deal with pillagers. Okay. All right. For these, I like using light gray concrete for it. Just personal preference, no particular reason why. And I like using, we're going to make this into cliffside. I like using cylinders for this purpose. And we're going to make it, I think that's a pretty good height. Maybe we'll make it a little more narrow. All right. In some ways, this does a lot of it. You know, with some of the other tools, you have to sort of plan out a lot more. But we're going to take some of the terrain here and we're going to incorporate some of the things that we've got going on. I like how this area right here down at the base extends out. We're going to keep that and we're going to go over and back around. So you can kind of see we're keeping in this little spot down here. We can then change up our brush here to be able to do that. We don't like it. We just don't like any of that. Okay. We might switch this to a sphere. Might be better. I think we have it just be too big. I want to have just a little bit more control over it. That's a lot better. That's exactly what I was looking for there. Okay. So we can keep in a lot of the shapes of this terrain down there. And then I think up here at the top, we're going to go back to our cylinder, but we're just going to make it real flat and wide. We can just have it extend out like that. And we're just going to fill in this area here. The first stage is getting sort of everything placed. What I like to do then is go over here with the smooth tool, because there are certain parts of this terrain that, you know, and at first glance, it might look okay, but these areas here where you sort of have blocks sticking out, or, you know, there's holes in the wall, you want to be able to get that corrected. And so having some smoothing works for that. We're just kind of going through, and that's just going to help fix up some things, make it look a little bit more smooth. As the tool suggests, it's for smoothing. And it smooths things out. But what I want to do when I'm doing this for this type of terrain is I'm making sure that I don't have these points along the edges that are sticking out, because I want it to be more uniform a little bit. We're doing that, and we're making sure we don't have these parts here that are sticking out. I'll make sure that those are cleared. I'm going to sort of bring these up and around. Go. And it's just sort of playing with that a little bit, you know, until you get it to have the look that you want. I don't know if this is actually, you know, sort of yeah, the sketch pad. Yeah. You can basically make it just about what you want it to be. So it's just working on it until you get the shapes that you want. And then flattening it out if you want it to look like the terrain around it. Yeah. And then I think that looks not too bad. We could probably do a little bit more with it. That gives us a pretty good cliffside. All right. Now, the tricky part comes with putting in the colors. There's a couple of different ways you could do colors. There's lots of ways that you can do any of these things. You can, this is just what I've found that works. But it's a lot about finding what works for you. So we want to try to think of what type of terrain is this? Are we going to go with something that's super rocky? Is it going to be something that's got a lot of dirt? Going to have a lot of overgrowth? And I've got some textures that I've created. Oops, not that one. I've got some textures that I've created that I've used in the past. We can look at some of these. So we can go up here. This is a mask, so it allows us to only paint the light gray blocks. All right, let's see. We've got this one, which is a more sort of streaky texture. Let's see. Don't have any of the other ones here. Oh, yeah. Okay. We could do. This is more of a just stone wall. but we don't want to use any of those. We're going to create something completely unique for tonight. Well, not unique, but specific for tonight. We're going to do, let's think about what could we do? You know, we could do don't quite know, actually. Gotta think about it. So let's get some blocks out. We can do no, I mean, I don't know if we want to do something that's more basic stone. I mean, we could use what we've been using. Let's just use what we've been using. So we've been using stone. We've been using gravel. We've been using dead brain coral. Tough. And let's get these out here for a second. All right, stone. Gravel. Tough. All right, so that's what we've been using. What else though could we put in here? We could probably add some deep slate in. That might be nice. And then we could also add in could we put in some there. It's the other thing that we could do. Okay. Let's keep those. So we'll do stone. Let's add in acacia wood. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that using something like acacia wood for texturing a terrain can mean that you have a lot of acacia. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, you can. So you can use the gradient helper. So we could put that in, and we could put in our deep slate on one side and our stone on the other side, and that'll give us auto-populate all of the different options. So you can, you know, cycle through these and see if you like the blocks that they're suggesting. But for purposes of tonight, I think we can figure it out on our own. All right. So we've got our blocks placed in, and we currently have, let's extend the radius on this a little bit. So we've got this pattern here selected. It's called simplex. And if we were to go over here, you can see this is sort of a default. And, you know, I mean, it's interesting. Hello, Celebrity Sailboat. Aw, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate you making it for just a moment. All right. So yeah, so we could do this, and you know that would be perfectly fine, probably, but doesn't. I mean, we can also customize that a little bit. So one way we can do that is we can increase it so that it's a little bit more noisy. Slightly different, but then we can also go through here and we can sort of stretch it So now we're getting a little bit more of the vertical lines in it. And that could be something that's a little bit closer to what you might see in sort of real world applications. You know, a lot of terrain, because mountains and cliffs and things made up of different layers of sediment. It's been a long time since I had a geology class, so I'm just kind of going off of memory. But you know, you're going to have layers, and some of them are going to be more vertical. And some of it's going to be horizontal. So you want to be able to try to replicate that with the terrain. Kind of use that when you're designing terrain. So that's why we've got sort of more horizontal here. Or we could change this up and make it more horizontal. That's not quite what we'd want. Let's go back to this. And that's good. There we go. More like that. So you can see we now have more horizontal layers here. That'd be the other way to do it. So it's just a matter of playing around with it and seeing, you know, what looks good. What does it, you know, what gives you the effect that you want? I'm almost thinking that we don't want the deep slate, because the deep slate is very bold. So let's take that out. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we gotta reset the percentages. Otherwise, we're gonna have gaps. And this is the other thing that we could do. Let's play around with the percentages. So let's just see how this looks without the deep slate. So it's much more brown and gray, which is pretty good. But I'm looking at this thinking, you know, the tough, it's pretty big chunks. So we could change up our percentages here. Let's make that 15%. We could then make the acacia 25. Let's undo this. And now let's see, how does that look if we change that? So again, we've got a lot more brown in here from the acacia. I don't know that we want the acacia to be, so we'd probably want stone to be the one. So if we went 30 for the stone, we leave our gravel and the coral at 20. Let's just make sure we do the math correctly. And then this would be 15. I think that would be. You can see that's just a little bit more, it emphasizes the stone a little bit more gray. Oh, thanks, Celebrity Sailboat, and happy birthday! So I'm thinking we want to, all right, let's go back. Let's look at this. Yeah, I still think that the tough is too big. And maybe what we need to do is we need to stretch it more. So we gotta flatten that a little bit. I mean, this is the tricky part, is getting the colors right. I think I'm gonna go down to 10 on these, maybe 5 on that, and then we're gonna go 35. Make sure that we get to 100. Okay, so that's 65, 85, 90, 100. Okay. see, yeah. What we probably want to do is let's add andesite. I think we want to add another light block. That's going to mess up all of our percentages here. I think that's been better. So then we can do 20, 30, 30. That's 80, which means that we then have, we can do 10, 5, 5, 8. Let's see. So we're getting there. I think we're sort of getting, you know, it's just fiddling with the numbers. Trying to get a color that looks good. But I think that that's pretty nice, especially from a distance. You can just kind of see. Yeah. And this is the first layer. So we want to make sure that we get no concrete sticking out in any of these spots. There we go. Yep. Got a little bit around the sides here. All right. So those now we need to do a little bit of work on adding in some details up to our terrain here. Because just having a bunch of stone is kind of boring. Got a little bit of something on the side here. All right. We're going to save this for now. We're just going to call this terrain test. I'm going to save that, and then we can go the default. Now, sometimes for what we're going, well, actually for what we're going to do next, we're going to use more of just a randomized pattern. And I think what we're going to do is do some grass blocks. We're going to do some moss. Maybe some green wool, similar to what we were doing before. And then we're going to do concrete, green terracotta. Now, if we were to just paint this in, clear our mask here, we could just do this, and you can see it would just be green. We don't want it to all be green. So if we take these down to 10% each, I can input numbers. Then when we go through here, you can see it just does a little bit. Doesn't do it on all of them, which I think is a nice thing to be able to do, because it helps show that this is Celebrity Sailboat. Thank you so much for the memberships. That's super nice. Yeah, fiddling with numbers. But being able to go through and have it sort of emphasizes that this is rocky terrain. So the rocks are showing through where the grass is. We can just kind of mix that all up in through here. And we'll probably want to do that down here as well. We want to change the size of this. We're going to do grassy spots down here. We're going to probably do that along here as well. So that's sort of the first pass. But then we also want to have a little bit of a gradient from our grassy terrain up here into this rocky terrain. So we've started with 10%, but now if we bump these all up to 15, we can sort of start to work it in a little bit more. So we do the 15 here, and we can just kind of do this a little bit along here. Make it a little bit thicker where the grass is. Probably do a little bit more out over here a little bit, and then just kind of go along. And we're just sort of gradually increasing the density of the grass. And then we're going to go through and upgrade or increase it again. We go to 20. And we go through here again. So we're just making it so that it fades in a little bit more. There's not quite such a sharp line between where the grass is and where the rest is. But I think that also helps to make it seem, you know, we've got this rocky terrain where the cliff is going to be coming out. And have it like that. But this is also very flat still. So being able to place in some things along here to make it just not quite so flat, we're going to want to get some of our... You could either get bone meal or you can get grass. And you can kind of come through here and just be able to place it. And this is where using some of the grass blocks and the moss blocks are going to really help. Because then you can place these other types of vegetation on it. So that would be something to do too. Now, the other thing that we'd probably want to do is we'd want to add in some dirt blocks. So just like how we did that with the grass, we could go through and we could switch this out, and we could do coarse dirt, and we could do rooted dirt. We could do regular dirt too, but if we did that, it could just turn into grass. So we probably won't do that, but we'll use these two. And again, we're going to turn these all the way. Well, we're going to first switch this over to the sort of randomized pattern. Switch these to 10%. And we could just kind of go along here. Actually, I want to make this smaller. I want that to just sort of be along the edge here. Do what I was thinking it was going to do. All right. Maybe we want it to be more along. Like that. could even do... It's almost more, it's more painting than placing blocks. You're just kind of, well, where are some areas where we put in, where it would make sense to put in some dirt here, where dirt would sort of be coming down the side. Yeah, force placement. Okay. Now we could probably see. Can we? Place in. Oh no. Not what we wanted to do. Air. There's not. That's not gonna work. Okay. So yeah, the only way we could do the grass is if we went in through and placed in the grass all along by ourselves, which would be necessary because, I mean, see where the grass is versus where the grass is not. We can kind of get an idea here what we're going for. So, you know, your sort of dirt coming down, spilling down in different areas. We could even put some grass on that. That would probably help too. Force placement option in the mini menu. Oh, is there? Force place. This is the part where it's I'm not, yeah, with all the allium, where I have limits to what I know. Okay, let's see. Force placement. Yeah, I don't know. Right. Oh, right. Okay. Force placement. Dates. Force place. Bypass block placement restrictions. Oh, so that you can then... Okay, yeah. We could definitely put the grass on other blocks. That is a nice thing to be able to do, but we're trying to keep things survival friendly. Oh, and the replace option. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, because I sometimes turn that one on by accident. All right. So, just get these placed in, placed in, placed in. Okay. Grass all over. We're just kind of getting a good feel for this. We could add in the alliums too. Put these in over here. Extend the flowers down. R. I play. Yeah, R to turn on the replace, which is also tied to the reload shaders. Currently, with my keybinds, somehow have not enough keys on the keyboard for everything. Yeah. So that just really helps to blend it a lot more. Do some out here, although we don't have a lot of blocks that we can place it on. There's just about enough. There we go. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. All right. Well, let's put some grass down here. Are just kind of so not I don't know. I think adding in the grass, it helps to take any sort of terrain that you do and make it more tied in with the rest of the world, because especially, well, in Java, I know in Bedrock it's a little bit different with grass, but Java, grass is everywhere. Can't get away from it. And so if you don't have grass on a terrain, it's not going to, it's going to look odd. You're like, what? Just doesn't quite look right. Now we're going to put in some of these other bushes, because those could also help break things up a little bit. And then, you know, you could also think about some of the other types of vegetation that can be added. I mean, because there's so much more now than there used to be. Yeah, the ferns And we've got ferns we could add in. We've got large ferns. We could have tall grass. We could have, we've got the firefly bushes. Those out. So I mean, we could even have it be where the firefly bushes are down where got sort of this area down here. Put some of them over here though, you know. We put in some tall grass. But even with really rocky terrain, you're going to have weeds and things growing in it. So that's why you want to ensure that you're not just having flat terrain. You want to mix it up. That one. And I mean, ferns are good for that. Tall ferns are good for that. I think we gotta do something over here. This side's looking a little bald. Just ease. Uh-oh. Have some shortcuts. Okay. There we go. But that's sort of how it goes. You know, you're just kind of going through, placing in blocks, coming back, taking a look at it. Should I add some more? Should I add something less? You know, what is it looking like? I think there's some things that we could probably do too. You know, I mean, you could think about, you know, what would vines look good here? Would we want to put in leaves? You know, or this would even be a spot where you could try to put in some of the things that we did over here. So some of the cracks in the wall, you could do that too. You know, it's just how much time do you want to put into it? What are you looking to do? Just because you used Axiom to do the big chunks, I mean, we could come through here and we could place all of these and have, you know, the cracks in the wall, and then let's change that to a sphere. Do blackstone. And light gray, and then get our stairs. Now, one thing that we didn't use last time, use two. Walls are another great thing to be able to add in to this, because you can go it makes for, you know, slightly smaller cracks around where the walls are at. So if you're trying to fill in a big chunk or not fill in a big chunk. But if you have a larger space where a stair or a slab is not working, the wall can be the perfect option. There we go. So now we've got just like a little crack. And that just helps to, you know, mix it up a little bit. Keep things from being... Because even if you have a lot of texture, if you are repeating that texture all the way throughout, it can get kind of boring. It's a little repetitive. I'll mix it up a little bit. And just fill that in. Nope. All right. And actually, this is probably not a time where it would make sense. You can see, I mean, it does help, I think. A little bit more interesting. What's going on? And even if you have flat areas, just by putting in two slabs like that, the flat area then is no longer completely flat. The one thing about using gravel is that it does create these situations where you're trying to build things and gravel is not staying where it's supposed to stay. That's okay. Work around it. All right. And you could even do the cracks too, where it will, you know, can be used for different types of, could mean different things. You know, if it was, you wanted to have it show impact of something crashing into the terrain, and then you could have them all grouped together. Here we're just sort of doing random cracks. But I think, you know, it just makes it a little bit different. Or, you know, if you're going for something that's a little bit more fantastical, you know, you can sort of trying obsidian. Trying obsidian is a great option to make things seem interesting or fantasy element as opposed to just, you know, your everyday terrain. So it's just, it just Ooh. Mystical. Magical. Or you could do things like you do, go through and you do gold ore instead. So you can use the cracks to tell different types of things. All right, but, and then, I think that's about, if you do, of course, leaves are going to be another thing that you can do. One combination of leaves that I like is to use primarily oak leaves. So we could have those, just have these running down. Come up with them. And then if we mix in some jungle leaves, I like the jungle leaves because they blend in well with the oak leaves, but they have just that slightly different texture to them. And then you can put azalea leaves on the top. That's a nice bright one, bright color. Just so, something like that just kind of helps add a little bit extra. A little extra. Just, that's a good thing to do where you sort of have not cracks, because these are cracks, a crease in the terrain. You put in some leaves. There, and then just mix in your jungle and azalea leaves. We got a little something like that. You can even do it down at the base too, because you could have it where there's a lot of terrain that's in soil and sediment that's washed down the side, so it's going to have more bushes and things growing on it. And then don't forget to mix in your leaf textures. Something like that. But that is pretty much how I do custom terrain. A lot of trial and error, a lot of just playing. Well, especially if I'm using tools, it's playing with the numbers. But even when you're using the tools, there's still a lot of going back through and placing in blocks if you want to do something really custom. So I feel like the way that I use them is Axiom or World Edit. That's great for placing a lot of blocks all at once, where having to go through and place in the whole mountainside by hand is going to take a lot more effort, a lot more time. But if you can get a lot of those, the brute force, a lot of the block placement, and then just going back through and then customizing it. And that's either, adding in the leaves or adding in the cracks or adding in the grass and the flowers on top of it. That's what's really going to take it from help it feel more connected to your world, is putting in that custom element. and not just relying on the tools themselves. So everything has its use. But yeah. I mean, I think from back here, that actually doesn't... That looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Nice little cliff there. We got lots of good terrain here. Our little bushy boulder. This cliff is good. That cliff is good. So hopefully you got some good useful tips that you'll be able to use in your world. I think that's where we're going to leave the stream for tonight. Thank you everybody for stopping by. Thank you OSG Hourglass. Thank you Robin. Thank you Sunburned Relic. Celebrity Sailboat. Appreciate everybody who stopped by, joined in the chat, and we will be back next week. It's going to be the same thing. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stream on Monday and Wednesday. We'll do a stream on Friday though, and yeah, I'll have to still plan out what that's going to be. But thank you everybody so much. Hope there's some good tips that you'll be able to use, and we will see you next time. And until then, have a good night, everybody.